Hello, I'm horror cartoonist Dennis St. John. I draw monsters and write twisted tales. As you can imagine, I was a little obsessed with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Lucky for me, so were most of my high school friends, all except one friend who stubbornly refused to join the Scoobies. So here we are, 20-some-odd years later. I'm teaming up with Doc Travis, John Teach Landis, and maybe a special guest or two, and we're going to make our friend Michael Poley watch one episode of Buffy a week until he's no longer the Buffy Virgin.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Buffy. We are watching, what episode are we watching? Wild at Heart. Alright, I'm your host as usual, Dennis St. John, horror cartoonist. And why don't we do a roll call? Start with John.
Hey, my name's John. I'm here with everybody else.
Trav.
Hey, it's Travis. I'm here, hanging out.
And Michael, the Poley.
Hey, I'm here too, just hanging, guys. I'm also a virgin that hasn't seen Buffy except up to Wild at Heart.
Thanks.
That'll factor in during the episode. You'll see.
Thank you. I feel like that's important for anybody who might be dropping in as a new listener to do those.
Of who's the... Okay, yeah.
I mean, the people that are dropping in are mostly hoping that this is a pirated episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer that they can watch for free on YouTube. And so it's a bit of a disappointment every time. But, this is actually a podcast where four friends hang out and one of them hasn't seen the show except for the first time as they're watching it. But it's also an excuse to hang out. So it's nice.
A lot's happened since we recorded Beer Bad, even though you just listened to it last week. One of us went on a trip, and somebody else got married, but I'm not going to tell you who did what. So now on to reactions.
Audience reactions.
Silver Spike 1 wrote on our Beer Bad episode on YouTube, "Oh, I don't think Parker is just successful version of Xander. I give the character more credit than that. Parker comes across to me as not just a user, but someone that's having a deep dislike of women underneath it all. I don't think you could accuse Xander as being that at all. Could you remember Xander coming out with the toilet comment? Because I couldn't. All in all, I think Beer Bad gets a bad rap amongst fans, but I've never found it that bad. Yes, it's rather weak writing-wise, but even Buffy's worst episodes compare favorably with other fantasy shows."
What's the toilet comment he's talking about?
That's actually a spoiler for, I think, next week. But yeah, thanks. I agree with Silver Spike on, I think we were too harsh on Xander with that comparison. But Beer Bad is a bad episode, though.
I love Beer Bad as an episode, but I don't think we're too harsh on Xander.
But I think Silver Spike is correct that it is. I would still watch a bad Buffy episode like Beer Bad over a good episode of many, many other fantasy shows.
It's more charming than charmed.
Going into it, I knew it was the worst episode of Buffy, or that's what I'd heard, and didn't feel like it was the worst. But I did, especially compared to some of the season 1 stuff, like season 1, episode 1 and 2, with some of the weird inane stuff that happens. This at least had some really strange character stuff going on with the caveman transformations and stuff.
Speaking of caveman transformations, I drew a picture of Buffy with the full Cro-Mag brow, and Rich brought up the idea that maybe Sarah Michelle, at Dingo Action, Rich, on Twitter, brought up the idea that maybe Sarah Michelle Gellar had a rider in her contract that stipulated no brow prosthetics. Which is funny, but maybe it's true because she was a movie star at this point. So I could see her being I don't want to wear vamp makeup anymore. Ren and Oz said, "My favorite thing about you reading that tweet out was the pitch perfect delivery. And then a winky face, which tells me I didn't read it pitch perfect." It says, "And hell yes, I would guest hemisphere and recording devices permitting. Hot tip, as lifelong musical theater performer / certified nerd, you don't want me for a season or two." I think that's going to be a really popular episode that a lot of people want to guest on.
Okay.
All right, so why don't we go into the summary?
The summary.
Buffy, Season 4, Episode 6, Wild at Heart. You may have heard 1 is the loneliest number, but this episode proves that isn't the case. 1, actually, her name is Willow. Buffy herself is all but invisible,
by the entire campus co-eds as she is chased by a vampire across the lawn. While technically she is the only person to literally stab someone in the heart this episode, she isn't the only heartbreaker. Willow and Oz's relationship is rockier than the Sunnydale Quarry. So bad, in fact, she is seeking hypothetical advice for her hypothetical friend from Xander. Perhaps the most surprising part of the episode is his rational advice: just talk to Oz. Well, you can't talk to a stone wall, so that doesn't work. Oz breaks free of his crypt and runs into another werewolf in the night. And it's Veruca. You know Veruca? Voice like an albatross, dresses like Faith. Well, those two wake up all scratched and naked in a field, and you can do the math there. Veruca states that Oz's scent is on her. Yikes. Buffy consults Giles after Maggie Walsh tells her that she was almost attacked by 2 wild dogs the previous night. Nothing bad in the papers, so she drops by Oz's crypt to find him repairing the door. Silent Oz stays non-verbal, potentially putting his friends in danger. But he has a plan, a very bad plan, to trick Veruca into being locked into a cage all night with him. Willow drops by in the morning with coffee and sees Oz and Veruca naked, cuddling, on the floor, and Oz is the little spoon in this relationship. World askew, Willow walks into traffic, only to be saved by Riley at the very last moment. Buffy takes her home, and although she promises to rest, she starts cooking up a revenge spell, but thankfully never finishes that dish. She is surprised by Veruca, who has come to kill Willow, however. Just in time, Oz shows up to defend her, and he ends up killing Veruca. Buffy is able to tranquilize Oz before any further physical damage. But Oz can't stay in Sunnydale. He can't handle his fur, so to speak. He has to figure out the wolf inside him, and that can only happen on the open road.
Good job, Trav.
Hooray. Travis, do you really think that Faith and Veruca dress alike?
That's a quote
That's
from
a line
last
from the
episode.
show.
Oh, that's stated. Okay, all right.
What's
like-
Willow's smack talk, which is why I just love it.
That's right.
It's so hyperbolic.
That's right.
Also, like that Faith is such a thing for them that they can reference. Like,
Yeah.
high
It's
water
like,
mark.
hey, remember that crazy person that was once one of our friends who tried to kill us all? Let me reference that person again and again and again, which is so true to real life.
That's true. Let's move on to great lines.
Great lines.
Travis, why don't you go first?
This line happens in the first 4 minutes. Buffy's fighting a vampire. She says, "You eat this slate and you're gonna get heartburn." Stab. That's it? That's all I get for my pun? And the vamp just dusts. Oh, it's such a good one. Heartburn. So good.
I enjoyed Giles when he's watching the game show on TV and he says, "You moron, that dinette set should have been mine."
I wanted to have that one, but yeah, I saw it already. That was such a good one.
Mike, why don't you be Xander, and John, why don't you be Willow?
All right. What does it mean when a girl wants to,
If you're doing it, I think you should be able to say it.
make love?
Wild monkey love or tender Sarah McLachlan love?
That whole scene is excellent.
I'm surprised they didn't.
Best scene in the show.
I'm surprised I didn't listen to any Sarah McLachlan after this episode. I mean, usually these are like triggers. They're triggers for me to listen to my 90s music.
I don't think there's a Sarah McLachlan trigger. I mean, maybe if you saw like dogs.
Dog commercial.
Yeah, dogs are about to be put to sleep. Like, about to euthanize a bunch of cats. And you're like, oh, Sarah McLachlan. That's what I want to hear.
Who's playing that damn Sarah McLachlan? It's like, I don't hear it.
John, you did a good Willow, so do Willow again, and I'll be
Right.
Buffy.
I have wrong feelings about other guys sometimes, and I feel guilty, and I flog and punish.
Exactly. I'm sure Oz is flogging and punishing himself. This is sounding wrong before I even finish.
Gotta love a dirty joke.
All right, let's do kill count.
The kill count.
I counted 1 vampire dusted, 1 human/werewolf. Oz uses the word hootenanny for the very second time. 2 bands break up, and 1 werewolf fuck scene. So,
Oh, the bands broke up? I didn't know that was like a confirmed thing. It felt like they could still play. Dingoes could
yeah, I figure
No,
when
no.
your lead singer is murdered,
Yeah, but Dingoes could still play. She's not in that band.
Oz doesn't play. He doesn't sing. He could. They could find another guitar player.
I guess it's a bass. Is he guitar or is he bass?
He plays guitar.
Yeah.
Is it hard to play guitar? Not the way I play it.
Yeah, it's a hard. Depends how you play. Yeah.
Let's move on to maybe it was premature for me to call Dingoes dead. It was just my guess, I guess. Let's move on to weird noticings and trivia.
Weird noticings.
I say Spike is totally right that Buffy should not be calling for more danger. She should 100% know this by now. This is how the show works. But that's a great opening with him being I'm back in town and I'm the big bad, and then zap, gone.
That was such a strange opening because it's a complete misdirect on what the episode is about. I don't know. I mean, it's fun in retrospect, but at the time I was super confused by what happened afterwards. Because that doesn't really come back. Spike doesn't appear again.
Yeah. It's also, Spike used to always enter Sunnydale by crashing into the Sunnydale sign. And this season, he can apparently get into town without that level of damage anymore.
It could have happened off screen. We don't know.
That's true. Not by act, not because he's drunk or anything, just because he's it's a tradition.
To me, Giles needs adult friends. And making adult friends is really hard. But I just read about a group called, I think it's called Men Sheds. It's a group, and it's for adults who are retired or older. Anyone who's retired. They hang out with other men and make projects and help people. And I guess it started in Australia. But I think it's right after this episode aired 20 years ago.
You should send Giles an email about it.
That sounds like a group of people that watch Home Improvement together.
Yeah, men sheds. The name's kind of crazy, but it's out there if you want to meet some other men.
Yeah, it's also Giles is just making that transition from being an adult mentor to trying to be actually friends with these young adults.
Yeah, they're not having it. He's still too weird. Yeah.
Which is sad. They've had so many adventures together and so many crazy experiences. You feel like they should be way closer. And instead, Giles comes across as super awkward. It's it's kind of sad. They should be over all of this weirdness. But
I agree.
I think it's kind of season 3 Buffy is I'm quitting the council. She was I'm done with this stage. But she doesn't actually want to be done with that stage with Giles, right? She always comes to Giles for advice and kind of wants this parental boundary to still be there, right?
Right. So Buffy's responsible for keeping the boundary up, even though Giles is probably over it, clearly over it, or trying to.
Giles is a super stuffy British, older British guy. Maybe that's just his style. He's never going to be like that, California surfer, stereotype, right?
But I feel like we've learned that that is to some extent a role that he plays, and that he's capable of playing other roles, and even though he's moved past his rocker phase in life, he still has the records. He still has his sex friends over for afternoon sex dates. He's got a TV that he watches. He has another side to him.
He's making baby steps. I mean, he's no Wesley.
I don't even think he's changing. I don't think he's changing or evolving as much as he's revealing that side of himself. And he wants the only people he knows in America to share on these other sides of himself. I feel really sympathetic to Giles in this.
Yeah.
I feel like he should make grown-up friends, but he's doing the best he can with what he's got.
He's not the stuffiest British Watcher character we've seen on the show, right? There's degrees. He's not the coolest one who, the only other cool Watcher would have been that we never even met him was that Jamaican Watcher. I don't know. That's the only Watcher I know of, right? Maybe that guy was cool. We don't know.
It didn't sound like he raised
Kendra's Watcher?
Kendra's Watcher,
Kendra in a very cool way.
Kendra seemed like she was even more strict.
Well, there was a lot more boundaries there. I think, that one had more boundaries. So maybe that Watcher was even more strict than Wesley was, and then Giles, and maybe there's a really cool laid-back Watcher that we never get to meet because they're I don't know. They're always.
I'm sure the cool laid-back Watchers don't get sent out on missions, right?
No, they turn evil. What happens?
Well, you're right. The coolest, like most relatable watcher did end up turning evil. You're right.
Spotting.
It is kind of sad that the second watcher we really meet is Wesley, right? Because it's like this generic British uptight watcher school that they go through that like generates shitty uptight humans. Because like Giles was a cool dude at one point, like that crazy, transgressive dude, and then like goes through watcher council school and he's like a total tweed wearer.
We'll see. Mike's only seen up to episode.
Oh yeah, let's confirm my virginity here. Yeah.
Well, so we got Mike watching Angel, so he hasn't yet seen past episode 8 of Angel.
No, wow, you guys have gotten far. I'm on episode 4 of Angel, I think. All right, hey Mike, what do you think about the scene in the bronze?
I feel like if this is your first episode of Buffy, this is a weird episode to watch. There's already been Spike, this like fake Spike intro where this character you don't know claims he's going to be a bad villain, gets taken away. And then this bronze scene has terrible acting. And I get it. They're trying to distance us from Oz and then show that he's like in a trance in a way. But like it just, the whole read is so strange. If you don't understand like you get that Oz is into Veruca in some way and like that's going on. But the acting in the bronze, it's so awkward. That scene is just like one of the strangest scenes in Buffy because you're also adding the awkwardness of Giles, like not getting with the kids or getting it. So that kind of like, oh, it's not just Oz, it's Giles is weird too. And like, this is a weird group of people. And it has like this freaks and geeks vibe that like is missing from the show in every other sequence where people are much quippier. So it's just like this understated slow motion freaks and geeks thing. Anyway, it would look like a bad show, I think, in another world, but I was into it, but I was also like, oh, this is strange. It just like jumped out at me.
Yeah, well, another thing that I think is weird about that scene, which I like, is like usually Buffy isn't the most tuned into other people's feelings because like she's usually the center of insane shit. So like a lot of other people's friend drama she like ignores, but she's like tuned into Willow really hard in this scene and is like, trying to like buffer Willow, trying to be like, oh yeah.
I noticed that. So there's a scene where they're turning in their psychology papers, or they're getting their grades back on their psychology papers, and I just wanted to point out that I think that Willow has definitely been reading her Calvin and Hobbes because she turned in her paper in a clear plastic binder. That's all. And then later we have the scene with Veruca, and I just really love the character detail that when like. There's this whole thing, the whole like triangle between Veruca and Oz and Willow that the whole time Veruca is eating a gigantic hamburger. It's a nice little piece of characterization to make her seem predatory and stuff like that. It's just one of those little good prop work. It's really good prop work is what it is.
That's another super awkward scene too. This is one of the most awkward episodes conversationally where humans like can't say what's really going on in a scene. Like that scene is super awkward.
But it's supposed to be. It's not awkward. It's not awkward in that it's bad writing. It's everybody is.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean awkward, like awkwardly produced. Yeah. I think the one in the bronze can read as awkwardly produced, but it's not. It's intentional. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I wouldn't say it's awkward so much as it's tense. I mean,
I think the awkwardly produced thing is a vibe that runs off of the Spike opener, which feels like it's a stupid show, and then it runs into this awkward scene. And then there's another awkward scene later, but it's all intentional. Just the direction is weird on that opening, and it's bad direction on the opening, in my opinion. Whatever. It's 20 years old.
Mike, do you have any opinions about werewolves?
Oh gosh, please don't trust a werewolf that locks himself up at night. Like, hey guys, I got this. Don't worry about it. Like when Oz like lets Willow off the hook to go to like spell casting class, like to hang out with other, witches in a coven. And then he's like, I'll lock myself up. Like, I don't know about that.
And then we for the first time see what Oz is doing for his cage since the high school blew up.
Yeah, I feel like there was like a somebody who was like an art student from like the sculpture department who like learned he like learned welding to like do bad art, and Oz is like, weld me a cage out of things I found in the scrap metal dumpster.
Trev.
Well, I feel like it's like these marijuana farms that are grown on federal land. You know, they're like these illegal squatting. This is what this crypt seems like. It seems like this is like squatting on somebody's private crypt because no one else has to tax for a crypt. They basically found the most decrepit crypt that everyone died. You know, there's no living relatives of this person. And I thought, okay, time to set up shop in this crypt that no one's going to come looking at.
Wait, is it a crypt? I thought Oz was in his basement at his like off-campus house.
No, he's in a crypt. They show an exterior of the cemetery, and I love the idea that a vampire could just like wander into this, we're off in the cage and be like, "What the fuck?"
I love the idea that he's apparently, I didn't even think about this, he's disturbing somebody's mortal remains. That's fucked up.
It looks like it's been cleared out, right? There's not.
Yeah, he probably cleared it out.
He probably cleared it out.
Somebody's like skeleton is he's just shoved it to the side.
I really like the welding of the cage because, like, obviously he has the technical skills to build, like, a door with a lock system.
A shitty door.
Like, yeah, the door falls apart, but, like, he can't regularly space bars. Like, they gotta be all, like, at crazy diagonals and shit. Like, how is it you, like, can't control, like, your 90-degree angles, but you can, like, set up a security system?
It's such a thoughtlessly produced cage. I mean, it didn't feel totally weird, but it felt a little bit weird. I'm like, oh, I guess that could work.
I mean, it works in the context of the episode because the whole point of it is that like he can't trust himself, and that he's sort of he puts himself in positions he knows he can get out of. So it works with the episode, but it does feel like somebody should have noticed.
Yeah, there should be a security system around Oz, like, make sure he locks himself up, have a second set of eyes on this system.
Yeah, sort of like how, like, drug people have, like, trip sitters. Like, you need, like, a werewolf sitter. Like, you just do.
Well, you said something interesting, though, John, where you said, like, he put himself in a cage he knew he can get out of. You think it's intentionally a poorly made cage, or it's just, like, a production design concern?
There's some, well, I mean, I feel like it fits. Like, if you want to complain about it, though, it does fit with the motivations of the character, because the whole thing where he locks himself up with Veruca, sort of subconsciously knowing that he's going to be putting in a position where he's going to have sex with her. I feel like the building a shitty cage fits with that motivation really, really well. Like, he's like, oh, I'm going to build a cage, but I'm not going to build it that well. Like,
but he didn't even have to knock down the doors. There was definitely open spaces up at the top that he could have just climbed right through.
Yeah, but if that's the case, then why bother locking the cage? I mean, I guess that's like, that's
again,
just...
it's subconscious. These are the games you play with yourselves, like how, like, like how,
like buying a 6-pack of beer and being like, I'll drink half of it tomorrow.
Exactly. I just did that. I've got a 6-pack right now that I'm like, oh, I'll drink more of it later, but really I won't. Like, yeah, absolutely.
Mike, you got the next comment.
Yeah. So this is related to, like, John had the amazing, great line about Giles responding to TV, and he's clearly pretending, like, to read, a book while he watches television. Like, Giles likes television, but has this uptight attitude where he can't like it. It's, he has to be an adult in some way, so he can't like it. And it's just very funny. It was a funny payoff for, you guys pointed this out in a previous episode, I think, where, like, Giles has a television, like, that's behind a bunch of books, and they catch a news bulletin, whatever, that someone is digging a tunnel. What the fuck is going on? And they investigate it during the episode where they get the Ring of Amar or whatever. And, like, Giles had TV, and it was kind of a weird thing to point out. And then, like, Giles clearly watches bullshit TV, game shows, which was, like, the lowest quality television of the 90s. It's probably game shows. It's just, like, the most formulaic bullshit. Anyway, I was a little sad that's what he was watching, but it made me laugh. That was a good moment.
Yeah, and I guess it also sets up with that whole theme, like you were talking about, of Oz putting himself in a cage he can get out of. Is like Giles with a TV and a book. Like, I'm going to pretend to read. I'm going to lie to myself.
Yeah, I'm just reading a book with a television nearby. I'm going to be constantly partially paying attention to this book. The Willow Xander scene, where Willow is kind of trying to connect with Xander about some of her anxiety about her relationship, like, as it's unfolding slowly, is, like, a really sweet scene. And, like, it's funny, it's interesting, and, like, it's probably my favorite scene, the Willow Xander basement conversational, whatever this is. Like, it's a very sweet platonic relationship, and like I don't think I've seen that on this show where it's like they're both kind of, she's clearly not only is she in another relationship, but she's kind of completely over whatever she had with Xander before, and Xander's also moved on, and like they're just relating to each other as people, and Xander's still being quippy and silly, and like I really like that scene. I like the vibe of that scene. I want to see more of that.
Yeah,
it's a good scene.
That is a really good scene. Thanks, Mike. I also like Willow's wearing the leather pants in that. I was like, that's so close to Vamp Willow. Doesn't count. But
we haven't seen Anya in a couple episodes, right?
No, we haven't. She's been out. Oz always just has like the nicest stuff. Like he's wearing so many cool T-shirts this episode and stuff. And I like one of the background things he has is an astronaut TV. It's just like my favorite kind of like junky TV that doesn't really work as well as you want it to TV, you know?
Yeah, Oz has a lot of really awesome stuff. He has this like rad like lounge sign. He has this like cool vintage desk fan. And then he just like leaves it all. He's just like, I'm out. And I'm really worried about his stuff, his apartment situation. Like his roommates are like have to make up and share the rent. Like,
sure. I think you're maybe like, you just packed all your stuff up. You're maybe like reading into this.
That couldn't possibly be happening.
Yes, it is personal because I'm also moving, but
you're having vicarious moving stress while watching this.
It's true. But I mean, Oz just fucking leaves, and like I feel bad for his roommates. You have to deal with the fallout of that shit.
Is he roommates with Dingo? With the other guys from Dingo?
He didn't specifically say that. They said that he's got a house with some friends off campus. I think is what they said, but not necessarily.
It looks like a dorm.
Yeah, it looks totally like a dorm.
It does not look like a dorm. It's a room in a house. What are you talking about? No dorm is that nice or has that much stuff in it.
Looks like a dorm.
Does not look like a dorm.
Oh, I was just saying that the revenge spell that Willow was cooking up looked pretty amazing. Like she references Hades, right? She references a couple of really like badass Greek gods or goddesses.
And I think she calls on Satan himself, right?
It was not going to go well.
This show barely ever like deals with like the actual devil, but like
Christian devil, yeah.
Will is like ready to do it, and you know it was going to work because of all that floating.
Oh yeah,
that shit was
It was like it was ready to be like a thermonuclear like spell, which would have made season 4 really interesting if all of a sudden Willow does something really crazy with her magic. Because up until now, she's only done good things with her magic, right? Am I remembering right? The biggest spell she's ever done is putting Angel's soul, re-ensouling Angel. Was that the biggest spell that she's done? Or did she do another spell in season 3 that I'm not remembering? Because season 3, she's always like, Giles, I'm a good spellcaster. I know my magic.
She's spinning pencils and mastering some of the 4 elements.
I would say re-ensouling angels are probably her biggest magic.
Right. She did some sort of magic this other episode because I made a Magic the Gathering joke. I just can't remember what magic she did in season 4 earlier with Giles.
She did with Giles specifically.
Yeah, she did some magic at Giles's house. I can't remember what it was for, but it was in an early episode this season, but it wasn't anything too crazy.
I'm trying to think on it. There's been so much magic, but Willow Giles combo magic is really special.
Can somebody who's listening rank all of Willow's spells to date from strongest to weakest?
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be cool.
We would really appreciate it.
Buffy Virgin Nation, get on it. We need a listicle.
We could figure this out. We just
that magic spell was finding out that Kathy was the demon, I think.
Oh right. I think they put Buffy's soul back in her mouth.
Yeah.
So that's really similar to putting Angel's soul.
So that's pretty big.
That's something she's really good at. She's really good at the soul magic.
Yeah, she's really good at soul magic.
It's interesting. I never made that connection before.
That's why we do this podcast, man.
I don't think the writers made that connection either. I feel like that's hey, we need a plot thing to happen.
Soul Magic is also the name of a late B.B. King record. Not really.
Yeah, it sounds like it. My friend Alina used to make the vests for B.B. King. She worked at a dressmaker and they custom made his vests.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Mike, Oz's plan?
Oh, yeah. So John already commented on this, but Oz's plan to lock himself in a cage with Veruca is stupid. He needs to tell people what is going on, get more restraints. He knows absolutely what's going to happen, but then is pretending to not understand what's happening or like not know what he's setting up. And that was the most excruciating thing to watch, because like the tricking of yourself that what you're doing. But I guess like it's a good character. It's like it's a super interesting character move, but it was excruciating to watch.
I think we'll get kind of more into that in themes about what Oz did this episode.
The moment, which I feel like is kind of manipulative of the audience, but I can't. It works really well, which is where Oz is like sitting at his steering wheel of his van, and he's trying to decide if he's going to actually go through with it and leave, or if he's going to stay. And there's a moment where you really think he's going to go back in the house, and it clearly wants you to think that. And I've seen this I don't know how many times, and I know what the outcome is, but it still gets me, and it's still like I teared up a little bit watching this, even like watching it multiple times to do this. That is intense and upsetting, and it just works. It just works really well.
You're being manipulated by fiction.
Yep. And I suppose that's what I signed up for. I'm like Oz locking myself in the cage, and I'm like, I'm gonna watch this, but I'm not gonna get teary-eyed about it. Everything's gonna be fine, but I'm gonna press play anyway. Like,
a scene right before that when Buffy bumps into the SWAT team guys, and then they like have a mini confrontation and they grab their guns. Did anyone else every time I think there needs to be like a wacky mix-up where like Buffy grabs a real gun instead of the trank gun?
I totally thought that had happened for until like the scene after it gets fired and like you see the results. I thought it had happened.
Yeah, it seems like such a that's what the setup for that is, and then it doesn't happen.
I never thought of that. That makes perfect sense now that you guys say it, but that never occurred to me.
That would have been amazing. That would have been a way better end to the episode.
If she just shoots Oz.
Yeah, it would have been dark ending.
I mean, already this was like, we can get into,
But it would have been appropriate in a world where if you morally transgress in any way, you're dead.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no middle ground.
You must be likable at all times or dead.
Yeah.
Or die immediately. What do you think about Oz leaving the show?
Hey, so I don't think it makes sense for Oz to leave the show, and I'm confused by why this has to happen. I get like the why in this episode of like him kind of morally transgressing against Willow, and like he's got a bunch of guilt and he tries to apologize, but like it's this inner werewolf nature he can't control from a normally understated person. But like it's weird to see someone not control themselves who's normally very good at it. But like I think it doesn't feel wrong. It just felt like, oh, and then you leave the show. Elizabeth just said robot chicken in the background.
That was a lot later.
The Italian job. I mean, the Italian job is gone.
Yeah, so like it just.
I can't hardly wait to see Oz again.
He's got some idle hands.
I will say so. It's true that I did some research into this. It's true that what happened was that Seth Green left the show for movies. He left the show to do movies. Although
that makes sense. Why can't he say that? I'm going to pursue my acting career. I'll be in Los Angeles.
So Can't Hardly Wait was 2 years earlier than this. The movies that came out immediately after this are not the standout movies in his career. So for whatever that's worth, it doesn't seem to have worked. Like, does anybody remember The Attic Expeditions? I have never seen it. I don't know. Or America's Sweethearts.
I remember the poster for the one where he's in a canoe with Matthew Lillard and they're like the same height.
Yep. Okay. He was in, and this is a classic, he was in Josie and the Pussycats.
Yep.
Although that's actually an uncredited role, so I don't know if that did much for his
He's a backdoor lover.
He was in Austin Powers.
Yes, Austin Powers, yeah. But that's 2 years later after this episode. That's 2 years after this episode.
I mean, Austin Powers filmed in what, England? I mean, you got to get to these set locations.
Yeah, I mean,
you have to take boat because he's a vampire.
Well, first, I mean, what I was going to say is, hey, you ever curious about an episode like, hey, how do we assassinate a character who's been around for 2 seasons? What's an example of an episode that just completely assassinates the character of a good person? Oh yes, Wild at Heart. I mean, talk about it making no sense why he's such a terrible guy in this episode.
The plan, though, so there's an interview with Joss Whedon that you can find where the plan for the character was that they was always something along these lines, though. Like, they weren't going to write him off the show, but the plan was to extend the Willow, Veruca, Oz love triangle a lot further and have that be an ongoing thing.
Oh,
I'm sad Oz is leaving, but I think 2 episodes is about all I can handle of Veruca's acting.
Yeah, I agree. I do not love Veruca for very long. On this
You scrapped the plan, you think?
I'm
not defending that.
Her acting didn't bother me. Like, that wasn't. I mean, I could see it totally dragging on longer, and like having like a more meaningful like lead up to this. This felt like so spontaneous, and the takeaway message for this for me is like people are fucking impulsive, and that did not feel like unreal. Like, I think people are impulsive, but it's just like, oh shit, you got to follow those hormones when, that fucking thing happens. You got to follow it. And like, it just felt so out of character for Oz to do that. And I know they kind of led up to it a little bit, and you guys called it out. You're like, hey, Willow and Oz are sharing Oz and Veruca are sharing a moment, when they passed each other. And it's like, and I think I predicted or whatever said that like, oh, that's a werewolf thing. It's got to be, because there's no other reason why only he would get it. And I'm glad to be right about that, of course. I hope that gets counted for, whatever, forward. But like...
you predicted she'd be wearing a yellow hat at the time, so...
So it's
no points.
But like, Xander's character is like so much more out in front about the type of person he is. And like Oz is a private weirdo. And then for him to blow up, for him to have like these emotional needs and for them to come out in this way was kind of a surprise, or the sexual needs come out in this way. Especially for someone who is like, when Willow wanted to have sex, was like, actually, let's slow it down a little bit if you don't mind. I want to make sure it's the right time. I'm not a werewolf right now. That's when it's the right time.
We're talking about it back in the beginning, in season 3.
Season 3, yeah.
Totally.
I mean, I guess you could say this is the first time he's like, he's had the werewolf maturity. He's had some sort of werewolf relationship. So you could say, well, maybe this would be like if you had your first, human relationship and you acted irresponsibly or irrationally, like how Willow and Xander acted back in season 3.
But yeah,
and it's not the same. But it's not the same, really, because I'm just trying to come up with an excuse for why all of a sudden would he go, absolutely bonkers in this episode. It feels
well, it's supernatural reasons, right? Like, which
it's like supernatural sexual urges, right?
Right.
Yeah, which I think is something we can get into in themes a little bit. Like, to me, it's like, can Oz really be blamed for his like werewolf desires, right? But then you're like, but if the werewolf thing is a metaphor, then he absolutely can, right? So it's just interesting because like where the state of supernatural is on this show is changing this season, right? Like, because Buffy is like having relationships with actual humans, so like when they're terrible, they're just terrible, right? And we're starting to lose some of that like direct one-to-one like metaphor relationship thing. So then where does it go with something like this, where you kind of want to not blame Oz because it's like he had dog emotions at the time. Can you really do that? And I think that gets to also like Willow's really upset about his attraction to Veruca, and like I understand her being upset by that, and also obviously upset by like them having like werewolf sex, but like I don't think it's fair to like blame somebody in a long-term relationship for like having attractions to other people. Like that's stuff that happens when you're in a long-term relationship, right?
Those actions can all make sense. I'm not like saying the show is wrong. It's just like it's like an unusual interpretation of a character for this show that likes to drag out these kinds of things. Like Angel and Buck back and forth over how much fucking time? And then you're like, oh, maybe Willow and Oz will be back and forth. And he's like, I'm fucking out of here. And the van takes off. Oh, he's off the show forever. Holy shit. Like, I guess that was shocking to me. It was like, they could be back and forth on this and figure it out. It'll be maybe a more interesting characterization. Nope, clean slate. He's gone.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just thankful that Angel never bought a van, because that could have been Angel's response. So thank God I didn't have a van, because when you have a van, you think you can go on the road and just go anywhere. But
You've seen Angel when he was scoping out extra young Buffy. He has a van. Metaphorical.
He didn't own that. Who's that
A greased up car.
Who was that guy that Mike thought was going to be such a big, important person?
Whistler.
Whistler was driving that van, man.
Oh my God. I can't wait for Whistler to come back.
I mean, we haven't talked about Angel very much but I mean, I think Doyle is kind of the Whistler character, right?
Oh, is that the intent?
In the sense that Whistler, if you remember.
Well, so Whistler's East Coast, Doyle's West Coast. I get it.
All right, we're getting off the beaten path.
Coast to coast with the powers that be.
Oh man, I wanted so much to talk about the powers that be. But anyway, that's another thing.
Why don't we move on to questions for the group? Unless Mike, you got like one more statement.
No, I have Angel-related questions now, but only because you diverged me.
Save them up until they burst forth.
So, Mike, I think we kind of covered this, but I wanted to ask you how surprised you were about Spike, but I also wanted to ask you how surprised you were about Oz and Veruca. I think we've kind of covered both, but how surprised were you by this episode?
So I was less surprised about Oz and Veruca happening because they were hinting so strongly that something was going to happen before this. I was surprised what a fucking mess Veruca was. That was crazy. Where she's like, I'm a werewolf. I'm fucking in touch with my inner nature, and you should just do that too. And like, I was like,
murdering people.
Oh yeah, murder people.
How many people do you think Veruca's murdered that Buffy just hasn't tracked?
Get in touch with your nature. Just murder people on the reg.
Like maybe she wasn't a Sunnydale student, obviously, so she's like a freshman. Also, like her hometown is just filled with like slaughtered people. That, like, I wiped out half my school.
If I had my druthers, I would have like a crossover episode with a show like Criminal Minds or NCIS where they're tracking a serial killer. Friggin' Veruca. Or like,
they're like
the end of the episode, they're like,
the case goes cold.
Yeah, it's kind of like our cold case files, you know? Well, that's like a real life show, but I would love a show where it's like they're tracking and then it's like all of a sudden the case goes cold for the last 10, 20 minutes. And then they just go back to their lives. Like no explanation. Like a fake X-Files type crossover. I wish. Where it's like all, yeah, okay.
Anybody can write fan fiction, Travis.
Yeah, what are you waiting for?
My typewriter.
That one that would have to be custom built for you from Ohio. Anyway.
That's the only way to write fan fiction is on the clickety-clacks of a typewriter. Mike, you got a question?
Yeah, sure. So Oz is totally hypnotized by Veruca and her music. Have you ever felt hypnotized like Oz feels? Or is that just a supernatural thing?
I feel like I must have been hypnotized at some point by the beauty and entrancing nature of a beautiful woman. Not that I can recall, but I've walked into trees before, so I had to have not been paying attention while walking at some point.
I was pretty enchanted when I saw the movie Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
That's a good flick.
Well, there was a lot of build-up. So if you remember in the year 2000, I think it came out, was it 2000 or 2001?
I think 2000. I think it's 99, 2000, really.
I think it came out in 2000, and then 2001, I think it was up for Best Picture. Or I think that was the award. That was how the 2001 anyways. But it was like, it was a pretty big name movie at the time. And it was shot very differently from a lot of other movies. So it was shot very beautifully. And I was like, you know, the action was very flowing and it was quite magical to watch that. So
no, it's just a fun reference. It's been so long since I've even thought about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and then for you to have such like, oh, that's hypnotic. That has done that.
I was thinking about like, when was the first time I fell in love? And you're like, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Well, it can be a media thing.
This was a love at first sight kind of.
This Crouching Tiger is on a 40-foot screen in front of you. If you fell in love with the 50-foot tall woman, then I'd be like, all right, we got one up on the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon thing. Okay. But, it's the sensory overload. So I haven't experienced that in any other movies since then, where I was watching something but like, wow, this is really insane what I'm watching. How can this be, this cinematography or these things or these special effects or anything like that?
Oh, I mean, falling in love with a movie where you're just like overwhelmed with how amazing it is. Definitely had that feeling.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
First time I watched Fight Club in theaters, I was fucking hypnotized, entranced. It's just like such an intense emotional connection to like the transgressive characters and stuff. It was like, fuck yeah. That was hypnotic.
Exactly the same thing, but the first time I saw Jurassic World in theaters, when the T-Rex and the raptor team up, I couldn't control myself in the theater and was like, fuck yes! I was like so pumped about dinosaurs teaming up. Like,
it's not a good movie.
Shut the fuck up, John.
John, let him have this. Let him have this.
I mean, you can like it. It's fine, but dude.
I know it's not the same thing. It's not, I'm not saying that movie's perfect or anything, but it has dinosaurs teaming up. There's points where people complain about there's like that shot where Bryce Dallas Howard is running and it goes to like a close up of her feet or whatever, and I'm like, I don't remember that scene. I remember the scene where there's a T-Rex feet in the scene. Is that what you're talking about? Like, I don't notice humans when there's dinosaurs on screen.
I would say that the latest Kong movie, Kong Skull Island, actually was pretty breathtaking when we saw it in theaters. I'm glad you guys dragged me to that.
Good.
There were some really amazing moments that I hadn't felt in a long time. I was really blown away by the Kong Skull Island. That was a great movie too. But there's some of the cinematography and special effects on that were really pretty amazing.
I was going to say in general, this was meant to be about women, and so I should have emphasized that. But like, I totally have pictures in my mind of not women I've dated, but just women I've seen that I felt like hypnotized by, which is a really crazy thing. Which is just like, you've got a couple pictures in your mind of people I don't even know, just like situations that were so sexually enticing or hypnotic that you're like, that's in my mind forever, and I don't know what that's about. I mean, I know what it's about, but it's just like,
I got a couple of those, unfortunately.
Definitely. I have a memory of getting lost in a Renaissance fair because I was so distracted by cleavage, and I was like 12, and then suddenly like nobody I knew was around, and I don't know how much time had passed.
At the Ren Fair.
That's a good time for it.
At the Ren Fair.
It's the only time it's safe for it to come out. You need context for cleavage. It can't just be there.
This got real creepy.
We are context.
Real creepy.
I mean, I don't think it's real creepy. I think maybe John's next question, when you combine it with this, is creepy.
Let's get there.
Like mental psychosexual imprints in your brain of attractive women you've seen. I'm just talking some smack about some Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon movie. Okay, I mean, I'm like the PG version of this podcast all on my own. I would say, this next question is kind of crazy, I guess. Should Willow be upset with Oz? Okay, hypothetically, this is kind of a hypothetical question. Should Willow be upset with Oz if Veruca dies, but Oz decides to stay? Like, she should be upset with him for cheating on her, but you have to take into account that Veruca was Willow's sexual rival, okay, and ends up being dead. How could you forgive someone if your sexual rival was killed, and so you're not worried that the person would go back to them? I mean, that obviously this is insane situation, but I was sort of like, well, it's not like the temptation for Oz would ever still be for Veruca. I mean, that's gone. But until a new Veruca shows up.
Yeah.
Right. So there's
just some sexy wolf.
Yeah, just some sexy woman in a wolf costume on Halloween. He just loses it.
Do you think Werewolf Oz is like, while he's in werewolf form, is attracted to other wolves, like non-werewolves?
If she sprays herself with wolf urine for the costume, I'd say there's a shot that it could get really confusing really fast.
I mean, what about hyenas? Do you think there's some residual Xander attraction?
Oh.
Only if Xander was in hyena form.
Yeah.
But not just walking around all human.
I think to answer your actual question, Travis, if it's me, If my significant other murdered anyone, regardless of motive, I feel like that would create major issues in the relationship.
But this is a world where they're all multiple murderers of like different creatures, right?
And
Of
this person
vampires and monsters.
And this person was a murderer themselves. Like they were bringing havoc and death upon the world.
True.
The world is
still
safer.
Feel like it would be something you'd work through.
You work through it, but I'm saying, it's not an ender, not a relationship ender at that point. If you didn't want it to be a relationship ender.
Who kills Veruca? Is it Buffy kills Veruca?
Oz
kills her,
bites
right?
her throat off.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, it's hard to make this a real world situation, which is like, let's say you're in a relationship and you cheat on your partner with someone, and then you kill that person to save your...
It's weirder than that, though. It's like okay, it's like I'm trying to put this, I'm talking about myself, I'm Willow. So what would have to happen is be like, my girlfriend is really attracted to this serial killer. And I feel jealous that she wants to sleep with this serial killer, but instead of sleep with him, she murders him, saving all the people that the serial killer would have murdered in the future.
But she also sleeps with them.
Also, yes, and also sleeps with him. I feel like that might not be a healthy relationship for me to stay in at that point.
Yeah. Well, you also got to figure, if you are attracted to a serial killer, like, murder is like what that attraction is, right? So like she's still satisfying herself. This theoretical girlfriend of yours.
Yeah.
Still satisfying herself by murdering the serial killer. Right?
I feel like, putting it in those terms, I feel like maybe that's not a
serial killer's wrong. It's an animal. It's
an
animal.
Yeah.
An animal or a cannibal? What did you say?
Animal. Oz is an animal.
Oh my God. I don't know. It's a weird analogy, but it's something I was thinking about because, in theory, there's no more Veruca. So the question is, the real question is, how much do you think you can patch up a relationship? That's the bottom line is, I can patch this much up of a relationship.
I don't know. I mean, my gut
probably couldn't. I probably couldn't patch this up, for instance.
My gut level response is that it's probably best for everybody once there's a murder that everybody should
walk away.
Find new significant others at that point. Everybody who was committed to murder should find new significant others at that point.
Oh, so you're saying Angel and Buffy shouldn't have gotten back together?
I am definitely saying that.
This is just such a world with so much murder.
Buffy, and then why is the Angel show called Angel? All right. It's okay. It's okay.
And they're not, neither of the shows is called Angel Murdered Jenny Calendar. Or why did Angel murder Jenny Calendar?
The biggest crime is not that Jenny Calendar.
The murderer of Jenny Calendar.
It's not that Jenny Calendar got murdered. I mean, that's bad news. The biggest crime is that Giles doesn't have the self-respect for Jenny Calendar, the respect for Jenny Calendar to move out of the freaking apartment that he found her murdered body in. That's
a really nice place, though, Travis.
That's a bigger crime. Both of them crimes.
I've never seen a house as nice as that one. It's a nice house.
I think it's an apartment.
Never seen. I like how shitty Philly must be that you've never even seen a house as nice as the one, except on television. I literally watch TV for the real estate guys. There's nothing like that in Philly.
Watching House Hunters, man. He's watching freaking Buffy and Angel.
He's got like a veranda. It's got like the green paint is really nice. He's got the nice archways, and he's got good furniture.
His apartment is insane, right? There's a walkway down. It is a private patio that you walk down to.
Yeah, it's super chill. I love it.
But it's an apartment.
I always thought that patio was shared in the apartment complex.
That's what I assume.
Oh, it's shared.
Lots of apartments share features that are super nice that you can get to yourself. Like the rooftop is usually a shared.
Oh yeah, if that's shared, he should just move out. Yeah,
I mean, he should have moved into the abandoned mansion. That would be what I would have done. The abandoned mansion for seasons 4 through whatever, man. Because that would have been awesome. That would have been freaking.
Manacles come with the place.
Yeah, he finally would have had some proper friggin' manacles. We would have solved some issues early on in this season.
Ropes don't do shit. John, why don't we bump this creepiness up to the next level?
I want to preface this by saying, now that everyone has pointed out this question is creepy, the answer for me is no. My question is, have you ever been tempted to take some form of revenge on an ex? So the thing with Willow that is like weird is that like she's not casting a spell on Veruca. She's casting a spell on Oz. She wants to cast a spell that will keep him from ever loving again, right? And then at the last minute, she realizes that she cares about him, and she doesn't do it. But that moment, and I feel like whenever I've had a breakup, that is not my emotional response, is not to be like, fuck her, she's awful. And that people, sometimes dudes who want to buy me drinks after I'm like post-breakup, like they want me to do that. They want me to be like, we'll talk shit on your ex. And I never want to do that after I've broken up. Do you guys have that angry response to being broken up with? Do you guys have that?
I have maybe had it before in the past. I mean, let me ask you this. Have you ever been like broken up? Like, has a breakup ever happened because of cheating?
No, not really.
Because I think there's a lot of random anger that comes into that.
Probably so, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
It never triggered that emotion in me either, John. So yeah, I don't have that weird revenge, or I don't have that revenge trigger button.
I'm suddenly realizing this is a humble brag on my part, and I didn't mean it that way.
Dennis may be a monster, sometimes if he's broken up with it. But I'm just kidding. I know you're not a bad guy.
I was younger and more angry at different points in my life.
Sure. I don't think it's bad to be angry at an ex. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I guess, but like some people do have the
nowadays,
especially where they want revenge or they want to do something. I've certainly had friends who, like, when they're post breakup, have that impulse of like, I want to get them back.
I feel like I've felt angrier at other people's like I'm like your friend probably. That's like I'm angrier than you are about you getting broken up with, right. And I don't know why that is. It's like I want things to stay the same. I thought things were cool. What? You guys aren't good at partners for whatever reason?
But that feels like the role. It feels like the role as the male friend to be like,
yeah,
I'm here to back you up.
Because when I've personally been broken up with, it's always like, oh, I guess I get it.
Exactly.
I'm upset.
I don't like me either.
It's like this cataclysm.
I'm surprised you dated me this long.
Exactly.
Totally. I'm like, well, I'm shocked that we were together even at all. So
that was a great 2 weeks. Best 2 weeks of my life.
Totally. That was a fun period of time. And then I
have to be in Mexico for another 2 months.
Oh, Travis.
That's
Travis.
Yeah, it's great. Great heartbreak. Heartbreak's great for you, folks. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise.
Yeah, I get angry I get angry at someone else's situation. But also been my experience as an adult where I'm in a committed relationship for like a long time now. So, I mean, like I hear about and see more breakups. I feel the effects of more breakups than I'm personally experiencing. And so definitely like those they make me angry, but also like, you kind of respond to the energy people give you. And if you're like, oh, and this terrible thing happened, I'm like, oh, what the fuck? Like, it totally makes you angry when you hear what people are up to, because people are shitbags a lot of the time. And then when you hear, and when someone finally breaks up, it's like the stories about them the whole time, like this whole new version of reality gets presented. The narrative isn't like, oh, and things are great and we love each other. It's like, oh, and this time I was suspicious and this was happening and this thing. And you're like, oh, what the fuck? And so they're revealing this story to you the first time. Like, you don't necessarily see the episodes where these things are happening. And so it's like the total narrative shift happens. And it's like, oh, fuck it, we should kill that guy. Not really. But, you're like super angry when that narrative shift happens. Whereas the person telling the story has had so much time to like think about how they want to present it. And even then, like, they're maybe not trying to get you angry. They're just like telling the story and they want you to understand why the person's not around or whatever. But
yep. All right. Do you guys think Veruca is like, she didn't seem surprised by Willow being a witch? Like, I just wonder what level of like awareness of the supernatural world a character like Veruca has. Like, does she know about other monsters? Did anybody wonder about that?
That's a great hypothetical. Because
she seems to.
It's weird because the main characters had such an expansive knowledge of all the supernatural because of Giles, because of the books, because of all their experiences, fighting giant snake demons. But like, if you were just like a werewolf, I mean, you probably would buy into some other common myths. Like, I bet you would buy into, like, if you woke up and you realized you were a freaking werewolf, you would probably buy into some other myths like vampires. But would you buy into the whole multiple demon dimensions, demon blood, all kinds of stuff that goes on in the Buffyverse? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, like
That's
when
a great question.
she said something about like I just feel bad for other people for not being werewolves. Like that's not her exact quote or anything.
Yeah,
Like that made me think like, oh, you don't know about how cool it would be to be like a different type of demon that would.
yeah, yeah, or half demon,
Yeah,
or exactly. I think her knowledge base seemed pretty low, but also because almost a little bit because they didn't present her character as anything other than someone who's like kind of wild and sexy. Like she didn't seem to come off like there wasn't any intellectual talking points outside of the weird guitar talk. So I mean, it wasn't like she really got feels. Yeah, then we never got a chance to know the extent of her knowledge, but she never came across as someone who was like ear was to the ground when it came to supernatural stuff. You know what I'm saying? Or books even.
I don't think she's much of a book reader.
Because we know there's just a ton of supernatural books that are out in Sunnydale. I mean, she could have
Yeah.
hands on some books, but
Frat guys can just randomly pick them up from the streets, apparently.
yeah.
There's no way she can't be aware of other stuff. There's just no way. Not in this town.
Not to the extent the other characters know.
Yeah. Well, I could imagine though, like if she has memories of being a werewolf and stuff, that like she moves to Sunnydale, is like out roaming free, and then she's like, I fought a bunch of vampires last night. That was weird. Like, I guess vampires are real.
I feel like Veruca specifically has a history that we don't know about.
Yeah. Maybe
There might be
there's
naive werewolves out there. She's just not one of them.
How old do we think she is?
I think she's about the same age, right?
Yeah.
And she didn't go to Sunnydale University?
I think she goes to the university
That's what I
because
thought,
she's
too.
eating on the college campus, right?
Yeah.
It's not like those hamburgers are like,
Gourmet.
I don't know. They looked big, but
Yeah, who's paying for her meal plan? That's a good question.
I mean, it does seem like if I thought she was just like in a band. I thought she was just a townie. And if you're just a townie, sure, you can go missing. We all know that folks can go missing from the town. And nobody's asking questions. But if you're like a student who has like a paper trail, sure, those kids go missing, but they needed like notes that they had committed suicide, right?
The paper trail is what means that people don't care that they're missing, as we learned that.
Well, no, but they made an excuse for why they went missing.
Xander still has access to that abandoned building, or that former Vamp building, so he probably has like just a ton of notes that they've written. Couldn't take it.
Oh God, I would love like a whole montage of him like assembling like this like a notebook of all the people who've been murdered by that vampire cult, and just really sad and really just like working through those issues like alone. Like he's making this little scrapbook of like all the people who died, and it really gives him pause. I think that'd be great if it really just gave him pause to be like, man, I am not a superhero. I can be weak and killed easily. Here are like the 30 lost souls.
Yeah, these are a lot of Van Goghs, and each Van Gogh is a dead body.
And it's like, I don't know. That would give his character more gravitas. That would have been great if like they'd really kind of matured him that way. But whatever, Travis.
Why don't we do recommendations?
Recommendations.
I'm super excited to recommend this next movie. Not that it has anything to do with this episode, but it shares the same title, Wild at Heart. David Lynch movie. Amazing. I love it. Not everyone on this podcast seems to love it.
No, it's great. It's a great movie. It's just, the title. I get it. Yeah.
That's the only connection, really. But, I mean, it's like such a like peak Lynch strangeness and humor, and like it's probably one of Nick Cage's like 3 best movies. You got to give Nick Cage an occasional good movie. He gets a good one every couple decades, and this was one of them. And it's got a ton of great weird scenes. And it stars a bunch of Twin Peaks alum. And speaking of Twin Peaks alum, I'm going to also recommend this movie Meridian, where Sherilyn Fenn has sex with a werewolf. And that's the only reason I'm recommending this movie, because otherwise it's terrible. But that werewolf sex scene's pretty great. So let's see. Other werewolf sex scenes are in movies like Trick or Treat. Has a pretty good not as good as Meridian. And I think, have I already recommended Bram Stoker's Dracula at some point?
I'm sure that movie's so great.
And that has a good werewolf sex scene. So this is obviously the theme.
Can we recommend Grindhouse because it has a trailer for Werewolf Women of the SS?
Oh, yeah,
which
good
is
call.
A fake movie, it never made movie.
That never got made by Rob Zombie.
Oh yeah, Rob Zombie. Oh, awesome.
Yeah, we'll recommend Werewolf Women of the SS.
Because this is the end of Werewolves for the show, right? Basically. I mean, you don't have to
Mayhaps.
say, but
Or is it?
Okay, it's the end.
I feel like we need a prediction on this.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, I'll be right on that.
All right. Have I recommended Cat People before? I don't remember.
I think you may have, but I'm not sure.
I didn't see it in the letterbox, but I don't know if the letterbox has been updated recently.
Don't do that. No, it hasn't. I'm guilty of not updating Letterboxd. But it had so few views, and I was like, I think people are going to this website.
Yeah. But I got to recommend Cat People, even though it's about a cat person and not a werewolf. I'm recommending both versions, but I really like the remake with Natasha Kinski. But both are really good. All right, so that's the Rex. Unless anyone else has any.
Ginger snaps again.
Yeah. I mean, Ginger Snaps is always good when we're talking werewolves.
Well, I guess question for you about mainstream werewolf movies. Like, what about the ones I think of from the 80s is The Howling, which I haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
But I just know
Howling's really good.
It is. Okay.
We could recommend that if it hasn't been recommended before. It might not have been. Yeah, let's recommend The Howling. Really good.
Are there any other, besides Underworld, like mainstream werewolfy things that are good that have happened in the past 20 years? Because I feel like all your recommendations are quite old.
American Werewolf in London. I don't know if that's less than that's a lot more than 20 years old.
There's one that I recommended. I think when we had Oz's first appearance as a werewolf, I recommended the Blood and Chocolate werewolf movie, which is from 2004, 2006.
Yeah,
it was enjoyable. Lou Garou.
I recommend Bubba the Redneck Werewolf, which isn't mainstream, but was a movie that came out a couple years ago, based on a comic. It's really funny. A guy makes a deal with the devil to be more masculine and becomes a werewolf. It's really silly. Yeah, I feel like a lot come out that are like small and don't really do anything, but I don't think like I'm not going to recommend the Twilight movies, obviously. I don't think
obviously
mainstream cinema has been on a werewolf kick in a long time. Do you remember Cursed with Christina Ricci and Jesse Eisenberg?
No, is that a werewolf movie?
Yeah, it was. I think Wes Craven directed it. And the weird thing about that movie, I guess, is that it was 80% reshot. And so there's a whole new plot added that I don't know what the original plot was. But it also has, it's not a great movie or anything, but it has one of the funniest werewolf gifs, which is when it finally reveals who one of the werewolves is. They in werewolf form are giving you the finger.
Have you seen this? There's a movie called Beast that's out in theaters that looks like it might be a werewolf movie, but I can't tell. It looks like it might be just based on the font. It looks like a werewolf movie, but it's and the title Beast, but it's not clear that it is. Anyway, that's probably where werewolves are now in these amorphous, ambiguous films.
I like the way that werewolves are handled. I think werewolves are handled pretty well in True Blood because they're a biker, which is a kind of it's not an original take, but that's also but it works.
Yeah, I like werewolf biker games.
And I also like the way they're handled in What We Do in Shadows. That works as a
comic. Oh, that is really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, werewolves, not swearwolves.
Yeah.
Virgin Predictions.
So, Mike, you are at a 61.7%.
Great.
Yep, where we still haven't gotten you into F territory, but we'll see what happens today. All right, we actually have quite a bit to talk about. So, in season 2, episode 15, you predicted that Oz is going to save Willow as a werewolf. I feel like that is definitely confirmed. Took a little longer than I think most of us thought, but confirmed. Okay. In season 3, episode 8, going along with that, you predicted that Oz's powers. Oh no, actually, I'm sorry. This one's a little bit iffy. You predicted that Oz's power of smell will come in handy again. So we overtly see Oz smelling, but it actually leads him off the track. He goes and smells Veruca's clothes from the sex night, but doesn't actually track her down. Then they have to go catch her. Now, we don't know if when they actually do catch her, if he was still following the scent, if that's what led him to the right place, or if it was because he knew Willow would be in the lab, because he knows Willow. I feel like it could go either way. Dennis, Travis, what do you guys think? Do you think Oz's power of smell came in handy? It definitely let him off the track at one point.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it came in handy this episode or not?
That's good. I would need to maybe rewatch exactly what he does, because he definitely realizes like I should be tracking Willow.
So there's a moment where he smells. He says, "Oh, we're gonna follow Veruca," and then they're like, "Oh, she must have thrown you off the scent on purpose, or maybe this is just from our sex night." And then he's like, but Willow, we should be after Willow. Yeah, and it's not clear if he's following her scent or not, or if he just knows that Willow would be in the lab.
I don't think he would know she'd be in the lab because she was up to some shenanigans. Like, it wasn't like she was reading a book or...
True.
Or maybe she beeped him like, I'm going to curse you in this lab at 3 o'clock.
911.
It's supposed to be handy. I would say intent. The intent is that it's a superpower.
Sure. I mean, and also, like, arguably, like, he used it to track her, even though it didn't work out. Mm-hmm. You could argue that's still handy. Like, it was still at hand. It was still something he used.
All right.
What do you
Hasn't
think?
this already been confirmed, though?
I don't think so. I've been watching this one.
It was confirmed in the season 3, episode 6 or 7, where he found the warehouse they were in.
Well, right, but this prediction is from episode 8, and it's his powers of smell will come in handy again.
Oh yeah,
again.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Okay. I'm willing to give it because I do think that's what how we're supposed to assume that they find.
Okay.
Willow?
Oh, yeah.
All right. We're going to give that to Mike. Possibly iffy. We might hear from the fans on this one, but we'll see. Okay. Season 3, episode 12. This one I thought was interesting. Mike predicted Oz will betray Buffy. I'm not entirely sure that I just wrote it down wrong. It might have been Oz will betray Willow and I just wrote it down wrong. Or Mike might have said it wrong. I'm not really sure. But for some reason, season 3, episode 12, we have Oz will betray Buffy.
I think he probably meant Buffy. Mike's kind of weird with his predictions.
Did Oz betray Buffy?
Well, like if Buffy is the leader of the group, then like Oz betraying the group.
Yes.
Right.
Buffy.
Yeah, you'd have to.
I'd say the moment where where Buffy comes in and is welding, and Oz is welding the cage again, and he doesn't tell her about Veruca is a betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, all right. Yeah. There's an argument to be made by betraying Willow, by proxy, he's betraying Buffy.
Yeah.
They are roommates.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go ahead and give that to him, it sounds like.
Wow. All right, great.
Okay, season 3, episode 13. Oz will kill again. He's killing another werewolf count.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Oz will kill again.
Okay.
Who does he kill before?
He kills the zombie.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. The zombie that's going to kill Xander or whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
Just when your back is turned, Harris.
In the season 3 recap episode, Mike predicted that Oz and Willow will break up in season 4. That is also confirmed. That's a particularly good one because, again, even Joss Whedon didn't predict that. That was something that happened as a result of Seth Green leaving the show. So I feel like that one's incredibly sort of prescient. And that is all. So it's nothing but confirmations this time around.
Thank God. What a great, this feels great.
Leaving you, Mike, with an average of 63.1. So you actually, after the rounding's all done, you went up 2 percentage points. Pretty good.
Congratulations.
That just tells you how many outstanding predictions there are. Since there's been almost 100 episodes of this show, and I have make too many predictions every episode.
In fairness, outstanding predictions don't factor into your accuracy. Your accuracy is the confirmations compared to denials. It's not. Well, then it doesn't have anything to do with open predictions don't count towards your accuracy. The way I wrote the formula.
But the more predictions I get, the less the value of those predictions.
Correct. Yeah, it's a reflection of just how many we have on the books. So there are, 84 confirmed predictions and 49 denied predictions so far, and 108 outstanding.
Wow.
I've thought too much about this show. All right.
So sorry, that's a total of 241 predictions total.
Well, I've got 4 more predictions.
Very good.
Oz will return is a prediction. And I know that he's not going to... Okay, so the prediction is Oz will return.
That's a prediction by itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not going to be on the show. It's going to be in the comic book or a video game or some other format or like a novel. But like, it's not... This is what's frustrating. It's like, I know he can't return because we just learned for contract reasons he's off or whatever, and they killed off his character. I also think Oz will return and save Willow again. Again, not on the show. Is that worth making a prediction about?
Well, hold on. They didn't kill his character off. Okay. Yeah, you just said the contract reasons. He didn't want to be a series regular, but I'm not saying you should necessarily...
Damn it! You just told me! All right, Oz will return.
Well, you're making some wild assumptions here. Like, I just want to make sure...
I assumed he was gone forever because of the contract ending. I had this prediction set up before, and then the contract ending made me think that it was forever. Oh, fuck.
That's not how the business works. Like, I'm not trying to tell you the right answer, but I'm just trying to say...
No, you told me enough. That's cool. I'll go sign my name in the other room. I get it. Yeah.
Almost had you, Paulie.
Damn it. Okay. Oz will return. Oz will return and save Willow again. In a platonic way. There will be no more non-Oz werewolves on the show.
Define show.
Buffy. No more non-Oz werewolves on Buffy.
Okay.
Trev.
Angel has werewolves. There will be Angel werewolves or whatever.
Angel season 2 is just full of werewolves. Is that what you think, Mike? Is that what I'm leading you to believe?
You're leading to believe something like that.
The big bad in Angel season 2 is all werewolves.
It's an all werewolf army.
All right. Sorry. I want to try to make sure I got this right. Oz will return. So that's a prediction.
No, there has to be wolves on fucking Angel because the bad guy's name is Wolfram and Hart. So the fucking wolf attorneys, duh. Werewolf attorneys.
Okay, hold on a second. I'll make sure I got this right. Okay. Oz will return.
Yes.
That's a prediction.
Yes.
No more non-Oz werewolves on Buffy.
Yes, we're done with werewolves as a category.
Okay. Werewolf attorneys will appear on Angel.
Yes, werewolf attorneys will appear on Angel.
Excellent. And what else do you have?
Okay, this is more
me. Save Willow in a platonic way.
Yeah.
Oh yes, thank you.
I'm annoyed by I actually don't think it's a true prediction, but the mysterious SWAT team will never reveal itself. It's a prediction I want to make because I'm so annoyed that they won't. Of course it'll reveal itself. I'm just annoyed by the fact that this is taking so long. I wish I'd made a prediction about how long it would take for this SWAT team to reveal itself or whatever this mysterious characters are. What's up?
I don't know what that prediction is. What
are
you
predicting? There's not an actual prediction.
He's just
a complaint.
Okay.
I'm just annoyed because the show keeps wanting me to think about this group that tased Spike and kidnaps random people or whatever they're doing and it's like running around campus.
So we're not predicting anything about the guys in camouflage yet.
I mean, it can't be much longer, but honestly, every character's brought it up separately that it's a problem. When is something going to happen? I don't know because it should have happened already. And this is bad writing on their part to keep bringing it up. Except it has to be like a finale tied in some way. But It's just
You want to bring up that you want to suggest that it'll be revealed at the finale, or
no, it'll be revealed before the finale. But
Okay.
it's like those characters are tied into whatever the finale episode is. So there you go. Season 4
I think
finale.
we already
be-
have a prediction that says
Oh
that.
yeah. Then totally. Then I'm done with
Okay.
predictions. Then for now.
All right. So my question, this is actually kind of my baggage more than it is about the episode. But so I think this episode invites us to consider Oz, whatever Oz is going through as a werewolf, like sort of as a metaphor. But I'm also like, if I try to consider that way, it could be a metaphor for addiction, right? So it's like a drug thing where can he control himself? Can he not control himself? Is he responsible for his actions? Is he not responsible for his actions? You can say the same thing about sort of anger, or about people who, maybe can or cannot control their anger. To what extent do we hold them personally responsible when it destroys their relationships, whatever. But for me, it's like thinking about that made me realize this thing that like has kind of been bugging me for a long time, which is like when I was like a teenager, I think I decided that the interesting thing about fantasy or science fiction was that it reflected back on real life. And like, I sort of took pride in like, I'm a Star Trek fan because Star Trek is about real issues, whereas Star Wars fans are just in it for the lasers and they're morons. And the thing
It's so harsh on the Star Wars fans, man.
I mean,
Concept art is so much better on Star Wars than Star Trek.
yeah. Anyway,
There's so many things. That's such an awesome hate.
what I'm coming around to is that like, let's be real. Like, I don't like, if I really liked Deep Space Nine because it's the metaphor for, oppression in the real world, I wouldn't watch Deep Space Nine. I'd watch the news. And like, on some level, I like these things on their own terms. And like, I like Buffy because it is about monsters. And being a monster is a fruitful metaphor for a lot of things in real life, but that isn't the only thing that's enjoyable about it. And there's some part, like in watching this episode, made me realize like, I care about this episode because I care about Willow and Oz as characters, not because it's some grand metaphor for something in real life. Like, I just love them. And I'm sort of like, as a grown-up, kind of making peace with that. And I don't like need it to be a metaphor for anything. It might be, but I don't care at this point.
That's really interesting, John. Yeah, no, I kind of feel the same way of like I just enjoy the things I enjoy. Like, I don't have to pretend to be smarter about the things I enjoy than I am, right?
Right.
Because I feel like we were pretty similar in high school with our Star Trek is smart attitude.
Star Trek is smart, but
always making fun of me behind my back.
Oh, for being a Star Wars fan?
Yeah. Which is ironic because now I don't like Star Wars or watch it, but which is totally ironic.
I don't think we made fun of you behind your back. I made fun of you in your face.
That's good.
Yeah, I think
I was a big Babylon 5 fan in high school. And
We definitely made fun of you for that.
What I was going to say is I agree with you, John, that I agree with both of you. Sometimes the metaphor on Buffy is really fun. And sometimes like you need the metaphor because saying what you want to say outright is too real, aka the news.
Mm-hmm.
But, the more I think about it, the more I think it's okay to be interested in monsters as a thing, because if we think about how many religions and beliefs that are on this planet or that have been, all these polytheistic beliefs had all these elements of fantasy and monsters and built into them. So I think there's probably a pretty real human need. This idea that you live beside or live with monsters and giants and all these supernatural elements have been a part with so many major religions, excluding a few. So I'm kind of at peace with this idea too, that it's just okay to be into the supernatural for its own sake. Never mind the metaphor.
So, Mike, what is it a metaphor for?
So
now that we're done with metaphor.
I like everyone's done with metaphors, and I'm not.
So we're not done, but we can like it and also just like monsters. That's what I'm trying to say.
No, I enjoyed the characters for sure. But like to remove this episode and talk about what's going on, like as an episode versus like, I like Willow and Oz. I'm sad they broke up and that these things happened. I mean, this episode in the way that Oz and Veruca kind of connect and talk about it, it's very much about a sexual identity and that your rational self does X, Y, because Oz is the ultimate, most rational character on Buffy, and Veruca is the opposite, at least in this episode, the least rational character, eating a burger, is a musician, will kill people if she does what she wants.
Number 3 and weakest, like least important, kills people.
Oh yeah, totally.
She'll eat any hamburger she wants to. She's a musician. She'll kill people. She's basically an ultimate emotion machine.
But it's mostly about the sex. It's about the sexual identity, because that's the biggest, most transgressive, crazy thing. Yeah, she ends up trying to kill Willow and gets killed over it, but we're more upset over the sex and yeah, we need an exit for Oz. But the stuff that feels real is the sex part for me.
Is it really sexual identity, or is it sexual preferences or sexual practice preferences, or is it really sexual identity versus what type of sex you would prefer to have?
There's probably a finer point if you want to make it, I guess, about sexual preferences, but let's get to that if it makes sense. So as it plays out in the episode, right? And that's, I guess just want to agree with whether it's about sexual identity or not, which I think it is. We have, this opening, where Oz is clearly entranced. He's been entranced for a couple episodes now with Veruca. It's about the music, but is it no one else is as into the music as Oz? It's clearly not about the music. It's about the sex, but he makes it about the music. He's trying to make it about something else, but it's clearly he is sexually interested in Veruca. He's staring right into her eyes. Everyone else is music's okay. We know it's about sex. They share a private, eye gaze before. Eye gaze stuff is super sexual. So it's he is looking.
He gets the flushed ears that Willow notices.
Right, which, it's a totally unusual thing. They share a private conversation about a thing that Willow can't understand. About music, but it's not about music. It's about their sexual connection, and that they share something that Willow and Oz can't share otherwise. And then Oz, chains himself up or whatever into this place we've never seen, but whatever. And Willow's not allowed to do it because he's responsible. He can do it because he doesn't want to be in that relationship anymore, or he wants to have sex with Veruca, and is creating this excuse where he can escape and have sex with Veruca, which is what he really wants to do. And this is the rational sexual identity, because rational Oz wants to be with Willow. Rational Oz is saying and doing all the things we want. But when he puts himself in that cage, locks himself in as a werewolf, which is super weird, we know he can get out. You have the power to lock himself in, you have power to get out of that situation. Houdini, right? He locks himself up in that situation. He knows how to get out. So he can get out, and then he finds her, and I believe they have sex the first time that they get together, because he doesn't want to think about it or talk about it. But they have sex about it, and he doesn't remember or want to remember what it is. And he says that he's a rational person. And then there's this great conversation I just pulled a clip from, which is Oz says, "I'm only a wolf 3 nights a month." And Veruca says, "Or you're the wolf all the time, and your human face is just your disguise. Ever think of that?" So she is the complete, full sexual impulse, and Oz is trying to contain his sexual impulse, and then he lets his sexual impulses go. He has a lot of guilt about it, which is why he can't connect with Willow anymore. She shows up to have sex with him in his room, whether it's an apartment or a cool, whatever the place is. She shows up to have sex, and he rejects her, and it's harsh. And that's when she feels so rejected, she has to go talk to, Xander about it, because the rejection is so real for her. Right? Because he's got so much shame about his expression of his sexuality. And then he, connects with Veruca again, captures her or convinces her somehow to go, because she knows they're going to have sex, into the cage, which is, again, he controls the cage. And it's just a place for them to have sex. But it's not the right sex or the sex that either of them would want. It's the worst kind of sex in a cage on a cold fucking concrete. But it's that's the sex that they deserve, right? Because they're monsters.
Shame, Mike.
Well, they shame them. Oz chooses to shame them with the way they have sex, right? And that's a kind of transgressive and fucked up thing. Is he chooses to shame their sexuality by making it take place in this cage together, right? He's oh, our kind of sex, this raw sex, can only take place here, where a rational person would say, no, it shouldn't happen. And then Willow shows up and shames them, and then it's kind of over. The show kind of took me along with this on this journey of sexual identity for Oz, and I empathize with him strongly. I also want to have all the sex. But I'm not a werewolf. I'm not a supernatural person, so I never have to like unleash. There's not that 3 days in the month where like I am my full sexual self. Like I'm only sometimes my sexual self, and I get to control it. And I'm very rational about my sexual self. Versus like if there was a supernatural element, this world's fucked. But I really enjoyed that, and I feel like that's kind of the werewolf story, and like it was so rad to see it. But anyway, thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Analysis, Mike.
Yeah,
you're welcome. It's all on the fly.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us, like whatever wherever you are on any spectrum of sexuality, I think we all regard our own sexuality from a little bit of a distance, where like I'm my rational person over here, and what's that other person over there who has sexual desire that's irrational? I think we all do that, and I think we can all relate to Oz in that regard.
The werewolf in general metaphor like is so easy to use as sexuality, right? Because it's like it's the lust. It's like your animal. It's literally your animal self, like the desires that society tells you to like chain up.
Yeah, it's about power. It's about aggression. It's about taking what you want. It's about satisfying your own desires. Like there's a little bit of the power Veruca talks about, and wrapped up in that is this heavily sexual element as well. That's kind of wrapped up in the werewolf.
Travis, when you ask about sexual preference, right?
I think it's more of just a realization of sexual maturity. It's kind of what I would say. It seems like Oz has been kind of, you could take it the other way where, you know, in high school you have a certain level of sexual identity maturity, and then that can change. And you could say, well, when you go to college, this is when it can change in some you know, a variety of different ways. Maybe that's what this could be. But
I like that. I like that a lot, because it's like when your sexual relationships in high school, you try to ape the adult relationships, or at least some people do.
What you think is normal, right?
And then like you're kind of out of touch with the reality of your body and your physicality, like what you want. And then hopefully you indulge in that in college, or you like get in touch with it as an adult, like what you sexually want, which is why Oz is leaving, like to explore his sexuality, his werewolf side, but like also figure out who he is. Like he basically has to go to another town. When you kill someone, you have to leave. But
yeah,
you know,
but
like,
I'd also to admit like that your sexual identity is part of you, right? So to say like the werewolf is part of me, right? Like I've been saying the werewolf is this other thing, I'm me, and then like, sometimes I become this other thing. But to admit like you are your sexuality to a degree, right? So that's the identity part of it. And I think it's really interesting with Oz, because if you look at the last, is it 2 episodes that Veruca's been in before this one? Like other people, I really think other people recognize he's attracted to her before he does. Like he's so in his human form divorced from his animal desires that he doesn't even recognize what they are, right? And that's something about him being that stoic and that rational and stuff, that like this shit hits his body without him even knowing what it is, which is interesting. A big part of his character. Like it's a big like when we first meet him, they're like, Oz, you never go after ladies. We're in a band. That's like currency. And he's like, nah.
I think he makes that actual noise.
I think he made a mistake leaving the show.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it's because the things that like Buffy is so much more memorable in the culture than the other things that he did.
Yeah.
I mean, even like Austin Powers, which like took over the entire world for like 4 years. Who talks about Austin Powers now?
Yeah.
Hopefully,
they were never quoting him. They were never like, I don't know, what's even a line from that he uses?
Yeah.
It's like, "Good Dad."
Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed. I mean,
hey, that movie's okay.
It's just interesting, this cultural idea, at least in the US, that you kind of have to go everything on your own. You have to solve your own problems. And I think, Mike, you brought up how being able to disappear after you break up with an ex is like this magical supernatural, or this magical fantasy. But it'd be great to see how this would have been dealt with in different cultures, where there wasn't such an emphasis on like the solo, on being, you know, you're like the superstar, the individual, like, you know, other cultures around the world, which don't necessarily emphasize the individual over the group. That would have been like a really fun way of how this could have ended differently.
Totally. I think that's really insightful, Travis.
But it just like highlights, I got some of my problems, I got something by myself.
Well, I mean, even we on this show, like we've been like really quick to look up to Oz as like the sort of like the paragon of emotional maturity, because he seems like he always has the right answer. He never seems to give in to anything. He always seems to be worried about other people before himself. And I think we see the weakness of that in this episode a little bit, where like he doesn't know who to go to for help. And so he tries to handle it all by himself and he totally screws it up.
Yeah, and he has the power as an individual to indulge his every impulse, in whatever, rationalized way he wants to.
If he just had like one good friend he could talk to about like his werewolf desires, this probably could
have talked to Devin from Dingoes.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like his male friends are all idiots. Like who's he gonna talk to? Xander? Like
Giles and him are obviously destined to be best friends.
Yeah,
but Giles can't read. Can't connect with him. It sucks.
There's an alternate reality where Oz and Xander like bond over Velvet Underground Records and then like become
Oz and Giles rather.
Oz and Giles rather. Yeah, Oz and Giles can like bond over like Velvet Underground Records, and then like they talk about his feelings. He says, well, I'm really attracted to this werewolf lady, and then Giles is like, oh, let me help you with that in magical but also just like knock it out kind of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Totally different situation.
I think that sounds really similar to Travis's AU from the end of season 3, right?
Yeah, that's right. Where they Giles leaves with Oz on a road trip. Yeah, and they fight demons on the road. It would have been fun if Oz had shown up at that. What was that, Jimmy? What was the bartender that that was the snitch?
Yeah, was it Willie's?
Willie's. It'd be great if like Oz showed up at Willie's like with like a super dark secret, and he's trying to relate to Willie, and Willie's just like freaked out.
Willie wouldn't be freaked out.
Willie would be freaked out. He's like, please don't tell Buffy that we're still operating and that we're vampires here.
I'll keep your secret. You keep my secret.
Listen, buddy. This is normal for me, but if Buffy comes in and punches me, I'm going to tell her about this.
Just so you know. That would have been fun if he showed up at Willie's for a time. Or you're right. You can tell that this wasn't like he was leaving the show for like a reason other than like a creative reason. Because creatively, the best thing for him to do would have been to show up on Angel, the dude whose whole purpose in life is friggin' redemption. But that doesn't happen, obviously.
With the van.
Yeah. Think about imagine a vamp working with or a werewolf working for a vamp. Ooh, that would have been cool.
All right. Well, I think we got deep enough, so we're going to say farewell. I've been Dennis St. John. You can check out my comics, at DENISCOMIX.com. Mike, what are you up to?
Oh, sure. I'm on Twitter at Michael Poley. I'll eventually make more YouTube videos, not particularly about Buffy, but, other videos.
And you can find us wherever you find your podcasts, including on YouTube. Please subscribe, like, review.
Yeah, and comment on YouTube. It's a little bit challenging to like have a relationship with a podcast. We're like, oh, tweet at us with your thoughts and stuff. I actually think YouTube is a pretty good repository for those comments. So like if you can get on our YouTube channel and comment there, like we always see those and comment back. Twitter, it's often, Dennis or I are only people on Twitter, but John and Travis all see the YouTube stuff. So like if you are commenting on YouTube, everyone sees it. If it's on Twitter, might be just Dennis and myself. So just let you know, like, not that you shouldn't comment on Twitter, but YouTube is like a more centralized spot for, comments.
Customize your comments to our weird social media habits.
I think it's true of the world, though. The podcasting is in a weird spot right now where, like, if you like a podcast and you have a thought about it, like, what the fuck do you do? Like, some podcasts are like, oh, hit us up on Twitter. We're 5 different Twitter people and add us individually. Yeah. And that's fucking nonsense. And, like, YouTube is, like, a centralized space. And actually, we get a lot of, like, more people sometimes viewing episodes on YouTube versus on any other format. And I think because it's even searchable. But, like, this is a separate podcast conversation. But my point being...
But I enjoy the Twitter conversations I have as Buffy Virgin. So don't stop doing those. I have a fun time talking to Rich and Renee and a couple other people. So.
All right. Don't stop doing what you're doing. We love you. Don't stop it.
And we will see you all in hell.